you're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include strangers, savings, and talent.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong! You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Issue number 1! You look familiar! First off, I need to say something about last week's episode. I had a rant. I was angry about baseball. And once again, baseball let me down. I was saying that baseball had been canceled for another week and that there was no end in sight for this lockout that the owners were keeping the players out from playing baseball. And immediately after publishing the episode, the labor situation got resolved. The lockout was resolved and they are playing baseball. And gosh, I hate that. I love it. First off, I love it because there's baseball, but I hate it that it showed me again that this is not a news podcast and I don't want to talk about things that are happening now because I'm proven wrong or something changes almost immediately. Anyway, you're not here to hear about baseball. You want to know about the Unabomber. You didn't know you wanted to know about the Unabomber, but that's why you're listening to this podcast, because you don't know what I'm going to talk about. There's this funny story. The Unabomber, he was this, let's say, criminally insane man who was sending out bombs to different people because he had an agenda, kind of an environmentalist agenda. And somebody saw a suspicious individual mailing a package, and she sat down with the police sketch artist and told him what this man looked like. And this sketch, I believe it was kept secret by the FBI. They were the only ones who knew about it. They were the only ones who had any idea what the Unabomber looked like. Well, years later, like 5 years later, Newsweek or some news organization pays this woman to sit down with another sketch artist and have, come up with a composite image of what the Unabomber looks like. So she sits down, she tells the sketch artist exactly what it is. He draws up this sketch and they publish it worldwide. Everybody sees this image everywhere. And the problem is that she didn't describe what the Unabomber looked like. She described what the first sketch artist looked like. She had sat down with this guy for, a couple of hours and was looking at him the whole time she was thinking about the Unabomber. And she had supplanted their faces in her mind about who was who. And so the first sketch artist, he held up, the Newsweek or Time or whatever it was, magazine with his face on it, claiming he was the Unabomber. And funny thing, not for him, I guess, but for everybody else, the lovely Wendy was telling me about shows like America's Most Wanted or, all the murder shows on Dateline and how they'll do reenactments. And then the actors who are playing the real life people will go out in public and people will start calling in, to the police or the FBI. Like, I just saw so-and-so. I know the murderer's here in my town. I just saw him. And in fact, they don't see the actual murderer. They see the actor who played the murderer, which, you should think about before you take those parts. How desperate are you for this part? Well, there's something you need to know about me. I have a very familiar face. I didn't always have a familiar face, but in the last, I'd say 12 years, at least 4 to 6 times a year, I'll be talking with a stranger and they'll say, "Where do we know each other from? I swear I know you." And I'm not kidding. This happens regularly, 4 to 6 times a year for the last 12 years. And in fact, it happened twice in the last 6 days. And I was telling the last guy who asked me this, just yesterday, in fact, that when I tell people, no, you don't know me, I just have a familiar face. People ask me all the time. Every time I tell them that, people are like, they just feel disappointed or like I'm lying to them. And I was telling this guy who asked me yesterday that I need something funny. Like I need to say something funny to people because it happens regularly enough. And what I came up with in the moment was like, I actually used to date your wife. So I went to Facebook and I asked my friends, I'm like, hey, help me with this. What are some funny things I can say to people when they think that they know me? And here is just a sampling of the funny things people came up with. Did you see my poster in the post office? And then there's this one from the movie Airplane.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
Maybe. What have you been doing on the internet? I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate. Yeah. Insert Pixar movie here. Yeah. Pixar movie was based on my life. Haha, I don't know. I guess I have one of those faces. If you want to stay safe and healthy, let it go. Don't pursue this. You have never met me. You've never seen me anywhere in the vicinity of Corpus Christi. Finally, please say my name. The doctors say my memory may come back if someone can just put my name to my face. And then this one I think is the winner. I would tell you, but we swore to never speak of it again. Issue number 2, savings. We just had a time change, and this produces a controversy every time it happens of people saying, why can't we keep daylight savings time all year round? And I'll just lay my cards on the table. I love daylight savings time. Saving time? Daylight saving time. It's not savings with an S, it's saving, even though we all say savings. I love the sunlight in the later part of the day. The latter part of the day. I am a night owl, and by the way, being a night owl is the thing. People do have different circadian rhythms, and some people do function better at nighttime than the morning. And if you're a night owl, one of the worst things about being a night owl, aside from the mornings, is that early birds, they think it's some sort of like moral weakness in you, that you're not bright and chipper at 6:30 in the morning like they are. Like, what's wrong with you, sleepyhead? Yeah, come talk to me at 10:30 at night when I'm wide awake and I'm at my most creative, and let's see how you're doing and see if you like how chipper I am. But anyway, as a night owl, I like the sunlight being available later in the day. I want more of this. Just like all of you. You all enjoy it too. And I also get that we don't like changing the time. Like, can we just stick with the time? Why are we always doing this? It actually messes with people. It truly does. Like, there's an uptick in suicides among men in the first week after a time change. It's a real thing. And as much as I like the later sunlight, I think that keeping a permanent daylight saving time is the wrong idea. We shouldn't do it. If we're going to do away with the time change, we actually need to keep it standard time all the time. And one of the reasons is that when the sun stays out later at night, that means it's darker in the morning. And in the winter times, in places like Minnesota, that means the sun wouldn't come up till 8. And if you were on the western side of a time zone, that means the sun wouldn't come up till 9 a.m. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? You know, it's dark at 6. Well, kids walk to school in the mornings. And you don't want kids walking to school in the dark. It's just not safe. In addition, there is this thing. If you look at a map of cancer rates per time zone, there is a higher incidence of cancer on the western side of each time zone than on the eastern side of each time zone. And it looks exactly like the sunlight trails of each of those time zones. It's weird. The later the sun comes up where you live, the more likely you are to experience cancer. And so if we made daylight saving time permanent, then we would see cancer rates rise across the board for everybody. So, if we're gonna do away with the time change, here's my preferences. Here's what I think should happen. It should be first is it should be standard time all the time. And I hate that. I want the sunlight, but really, if we're gonna do away with it, then it needs to be standard across the board. We got to go Indiana and Arizona on this thing. The second best option is to keep it the way it is, which means we have a time change twice a year. The third best option would be to have daylight saving time all year round. Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@thewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, thewrongpodcast.com, and help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show. I was wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Listener Matt writes in, and he says, another great podcast this week. Your take on Zelensky practicing what he preaches was so spot on. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of all of this, he is exiled to the U.S. and becomes a media sensation, or even down the road becomes a U.S. politician. Curious if the woman who traveled 2 hours off her course to see the Switzerland town of North Carolina was named Wendy.
Wrong!
Well, no, it was not named. Her name was not Wendy, and it was not the lovely Wendy of marital bliss in my life. And here's the thing with Zelensky. Yes, if he came to the United States right now, he would be a media star. And he already was a TV star in Ukraine. He's prime for it. It was his career. I don't know that he's actually going to survive this. So the chances of him coming here and becoming a U.S. politician, I think, are kind of slim. One thing that I just heard this week was that before the Russian invasion, his approval rating in Ukraine was 25%. That's awful. And that just shows you, like, being the right leader at the right time. Sometimes it's about the situation. It's about events, not about who you are as a leader. And again, he's meeting the lowest bar of leadership. Do what you ask everybody else to do. Issue number 3. Work for it. Okay, so during the Major League Baseball lockout, there was one guy, he started on Reddit and then he expanded this to Twitter and Instagram as well. But he started drawing a picture of Mike Trout every day. Now, Mike Trout is my favorite baseball player. I have actually a fan page, website, and social media accounts devoted to Mike Trout. I feel so lucky that he plays for my favorite baseball team. So this guy, he also feels inspired by Mike Trout, and he's like, all right, every day of the lockout, I'm going to draw a picture of Mike Trout. And his first few were awful. Like, they were kind of funny how bad they were. It had the charm of like a second grader drawing, a picture of a baseball player. But as he went, they got much better. Like, over time, he actually really improved his skills. It goes to show that if you do something every day, you're going to get better at it. And this made me reflect on something that's been a bit of a salvation, an encouragement to me as an artist, as a graphic designer. I read this article about how there's two kinds of talented people. The first kind is the person who's just innately talented, and they bring something immediately to the field that nobody else has ever seen, and everybody loves it. And everybody gloms onto it, and then they fade away. They don't continue to produce. Or if they do, it's not regarded as highly as it once was. The second kind of talented person is the person who has some affinity towards something, and they've got some innate talent, but not a ton, but they just continue to work at it day after day, month after month, year after year. And towards the end of their careers, they're highly regarded. They're considered experts, and everybody loves them. And when you think about where you see this most often, I think the music industry is the best example. The music industry loves what's hot. That's why there's so many one-hit wonders. This person is great. Oh, they sound so different. We love them. Let's take what they have, and then we'll ditch them when they're gone. A great example would be MC Hammer. Like, #1 album for quite a long time. We're all still singing.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. My music hits me so hard, makes me say, oh my Lord, thank you for blessing me.
And I dare you to name a song off of any other album by MC Hammer. I'm not even sure he had another album after that. Somebody here from who is a Gen X or millennial alive in the 90s was like, yes. Oh, what about this one? But seriously, like, he faded pretty quick, right? Now, the other example of a person who works at it would be Ray Charles.
Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
Not many people really listened to Ray Charles at the beginning of his career. He might have been just as talented, but really where he became a star was in the later part of his career when he had gray hair. And now we consider him a master. You know, Doogie Howser was this TV show about this, child genius who graduates from high school super early and graduates from medical school by the time he's like 14 or 16 or something like that. And he becomes a pediatrician in a hospital. And what's the deal with the pediatrician who only works in a hospital? Most pediatricians work in clinics, but that's a different point altogether. But those kids, like Doogie Howser, oh, by the way, I think the Disney Channel or Disney Plus remade Doogie Howser and set it as a girl in Hawaii, which is like the most Disney Channel thing ever, right? Like, oh yeah, let's take Doogie Howser, but let's put it in Hawaii. Like, okay. I mean, smart people live in Hawaii to be sure. But anyways, it seems like you got too much going on there. But maybe you disagree. Tell me why you disagree. Anyway, what I was going to say about the kids who are like Doogie Howser, who graduate from high school by the time they're 14, or, have their college degrees at that point already. You don't hear about them later in life. I'm sure they're all doing well. They're all doing great, but you don't hear about these child prodigies becoming some other, major influence in life that we're like, oh man, we all saw this coming when he was so brilliant in junior high. Or he wasn't in junior high when he was 12, but when he was the age of a junior higher. And part of that reason is that learning is easy for them. And that's why they are accelerating so quickly, because it's just easy. And so they want more and more and more and more, and they take it all. But they lack grit. They don't have they didn't have to work hard for things as they went to school. It all just came easy to them. And so that causes them to plateau out at an earlier stage of other people who might have similar intelligence, but were unable to move ahead as quickly as they did. So, if you feel discouraged that you're middle-aged and you didn't become a hit, you realize that, your early 20s passed you by already, and you're never going to be the hit that Katy Perry was or whoever. Don't worry. Just keep working. Keep working. Hard work can pay off and be regarded as high talent later in life. But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know, and let me know why. I had fun, and I hope you did too. Bye-bye.